Hello everyone, it's Max from the Nerd Desk, and I'd like to welcome you to the premiere of Comic Comparison Season 2. It's been a hot minute, I know, but with school practically over, we are finally back, and as you saw in the title, I'm kicking us off with Batman Hush. The Caped Crusader has been a key part of this series since the beginning, so I felt it appropriate for old time's sake, not like you all voted on it or anything. I wanted to buy Garth Ennis' Punisher. Be grateful. Initially released in 2002, Hush is yet another one of Batman's more popular comics, and introduced a new character named Hush. How about that? It was even popular enough to get a sequel just a few months ago called Hatoosh, Very Fast and Furious. But in 2019, it received its film debut as part of a direct-to-DVD connected universe of animated films that started with the Flashpoint in 2013, often referred to as the DCAMU. The book was a great read, feeling like a cross between The Long Halloween and Under the Red Hood, which, funny enough, came out 2 years after Hush ended. I'm ready to compare these two, so with all that being said, let's get started. The movie opens with Bruce attending some sort of formal event and meeting up with Selina Kyle and a childhood friend, Thomas Elliot, who's now a renowned surgeon. Before they can talk, though, Bruce is called away to deal with a young boy being held for ransom, which is where the book starts. And when the money gets delivered, Batman heads in to save him. News 52, that's cute. In the book, he fights a feral, mutating Killer Croc, but the movie changes it to Bane supercharged on Venom.
What?
He eventually defeats the villain and rescues the boy, but the ransom money is stolen away by Catwoman, and Batman chases after her. In the movie, though, before he leaves, Lady Shiva appears and tells him that one of the last remaining Lazarus pits was secretly used, and asks him to look into it, to which he agrees. After, Batman chases Catwoman with some funny back-and-forth banter until somebody cuts his grapple line, and he falls to the ground out cold. Some thugs try to unmask him, but the suit defends him automatically. In the comic, the Huntress is sent by Oracle to save him, and there's a cool fight scene with her and the thugs, but in the movie, Catwoman returns and fights them off after she saw him fall.
You know, some guys pay for that.
Then she's confronted by Batgirl, who tells her off and takes Batman back to the cave, and never shows up again. There, Alfred and Nightwing create a cover story to bring Bruce to a hospital for surgery. In the movie, Alfred calls Tommy Elliot, but in the book, Bruce uses Morse code to suggest going to him. The book then has a scene of Tommy performing the surgery mixed in with flashbacks of him and Bruce playing as kids. He finishes and steps outside to update the news, then it switches mid-sentence to a masked man covered in bandages tearing up a newspaper about Bruce's recovery. In the movie, Bruce wakes up in the hospital after the surgery, and Tommy gives him some doctor's orders, which he promptly disregards and suits up in a new bulletproof suit Alfred made. At the same time, Catwoman arrives at a rooftop greenhouse with the ransom money, revealing that she's been hypnotized by Poison Ivy, who then passes off the money to the same mysterious man from earlier. Batman arrives at Arkham to interrogate the villain from earlier under the supervision of everybody's favorite Amanda Waller. However, the villain escapes to go track down Ivy for setting them up. In the movie, the two work together to find Bane, and in the book, Waller gives Batman until midnight to find Killer Croc because she's under orders from President Luthor to bring him in. Yeah, it looks like Luthor beat Bush in the 2000 election. What if Max Lord was his VP? Next, the comic shows Thomas Elliot arriving at Wayne Manor to check up on Bruce, only for him to obviously not be there, and leaves after telling Alfred that this is a dangerous game Bruce is playing.
What a wicked game to play.
This leads into another flashback that shows Tommy at the front door of the manor, asking the Waynes to save his parents from a fatal car accident. Bruce promises him that his parents will be okay, but when his father steps out of the operating room, he tells the boys that only his mother survived, causing Tommy to lash out at Bruce, calling him a liar. Throughout the book, there's a lot more of these flashbacks that really establish how good of friends the two were, and it's a cool window into Bruce's past. Next, one of the tires is shot out on the Batmobile, and it crashes. Then, the escaped villain arrives at Ivy's greenhouse, running into Catwoman, who's also looking for payback, and it looks like she's about to be squashed until Batman arrives and destroys him. Before Croc gets taken, he angrily tells the two that the ransom money was going to pay for a surgery to fix his mutations, but then is suddenly captured by Argus before he can spill anything about who hired him. It's a small detail, but that adds humanity to Croc's character. Arkham Knight used a similar plot device too. Batman meets with Catwoman afterward, who wants to help him track down Poison Ivy, because she didn't take too kindly to being mind-controlled, especially after being crime-free for over a year. I mean, I'd be pretty mad. He agrees, and the two then go to Metropolis, where Bruce pays a visit to Lois Lane and Clark Kent at the Daily Planet, secretly staying in touch with Oracle. This is where we come to the first major split between the book and the movie. In the book, Batman finds the acting CEO of LexCorp, Talia al Ghul, and asks her for help finding Ivy, who's been buying plant chemicals. Then he meets with Catwoman again, and their bond deepens. In the movie, though, Batman goes to Lex Luthor's apartment and has him track the chemical deliveries to the Trifid building, a reference to the book The Day of the Trifids about killer plants, which is a nice touch. They talk about events from other movies, and the scene ends. Now, in both versions, Catwoman arrives at the greenhouse, pretending to still be under Ivy's control, which she sees through almost instantly and goes for the kill shot. Thankfully, Batman arrives, causing Ivy to call in her own backup.
Is Batman your new boy toy? I have one too.
Using kryptonite lipstick, she's been able to put the moves on the Man of Steel, whom she promptly orders to kill the heroes.
Tell me you have a plan.
Yes. Run.
Following their escape, we get a pretty cool fight between the world's finest, with some kryptonite jewelry and dialogue ripped right out of the book.
I've opened the gas main. One spark from your heat vision, you blow up the entire block. And you know what building we're under.
In general, the movie uses a lot of lines from the book, word for word, and thankfully it doesn't come off as cheesy, like, huh, that's a line from the original, did you hear it? Anyways, Superman breaks the control when Catwoman throws Lois Lane off a roof. The three return to interrogate Ivy, where she reveals her mysterious boss is named Hush.
It's true, he calls himself Hush.
You sure you didn't just really want them to, but it never quite worked out?
Bats and Superman then thank each other in a pretty wholesome conversation that reminds us of their friendship, which I feel can often get forgotten by general audiences. Now back in Gotham, Bruce goes to an opera with Selina, Tommy, and one of his childhood guardians, Leslie Tompkins. In the book, it's a hangout for Bruce and Tommy, but the movie actually changes it to a date between Bruce and Selina. We see Dick and Alfred getting him ready, and on the way he gets a FaceTime from his son, Damian.
However, I must insist that you use protection. And another thing.
Damian is a key character in the DC AMU, so he was bound to show up sooner or later. Anyways, everything is going fine until the opera is crashed by none other than Harley Quinn, who starts robbing the audience, even stealing a piece of jewelry from Tommy before Batman and Catwoman show up. Harley knocks Catwoman unconscious, and Batman chases her into an alleyway, and after hearing a gunshot, he then finds Tommy dead on the ground, and the Joker standing over him holding a smoking gun.
I'm totally innocent. Ugh, that doesn't even sound right, does it?
At this moment, Batman completely loses it and starts attacking the Joker worse than ever before while recounting everyone he's hurt. Jason Todd, Oracle, Jim, and now Tommy. Joker pleads and claims he didn't do it, but it's no good. In the comic, Catwoman and Harley both try to stop him but get knocked out. It takes Gordon threatening to shoot him then and there that finally snaps him out of it.
Gotham needs Batman.
During this, Hush can be seen on a nearby rooftop, holding up a scratched coin, the calling card of Two-Face. Then, a funeral is held for Tommy, where he's buried next to his parents. Here is about the halfway to 60% point of the story, and also where the book and comic become a lot more different from one another. I'll start with the movie because it's simpler. After the funeral, Bruce starts connecting more dots to Hush. Then, he and Nightwing stop Riddler from an armored truck robbery.
There was no riddle. That's the point.
Then, Batman spots Hush on a nearby rooftop and chases him into a building. It's one of those scenes where the villain uses mirrors to mess with the hero, and Hush threatens to kill everyone Batman cares about. Catwoman then returns to her home to find Batman waiting, and he reveals his identity to her. Then there's a montage of the two fighting crime as a couple, and Selina's properly introduced to Nightwing, Alfred, and Robin.
Who's Damian?
Robin. His son?
I've said it before in this series that Catwoman is Batman's best love interest, so I really like that this book explores a genuine relationship between the two and her place in the Bat family. Now to catch the comic up. After Tommy's funeral, Bats and Nightwing stop the Riddler from robbing an armored car. Here he notes that his villains have all been acting out of character since all of this started, plus a clue from the truck leads him to suspect Ra's al Ghul as the puppet master pulling all the strings. Then we get the scene of Bruce revealing his identity to Selina, and he kidnaps Talia al Ghul from her LexCorp jet and leaves her with Catwoman, going to the desert for a sword fight with Ra's. At the same time, Lady Shiva attacks Catwoman to take Talia back. Batman eventually beats Ra's, who tells him that he isn't involved, but that somebody has recently used one of the Lazarus pits. All of this material with the League of Assassins was obviously cut from the movie, and Lady Shiva's cameo was the replacement, which makes more sense when we get to the ending. As all of this is happening, we see Hush take off his bandages in front of Joker and Arkham, revealing himself as a fully healed Two-Face, who then goes to Jim Gordon and offers to help save Batman from what he calls the game. I know that sounds really confusing, but I promise when we get to the climax, it'll all make sense. Batman begins to question if Catwoman is involved in the Hush plot, and we then see her get attacked in a graveyard by the Huntress from earlier in the story, who's been gassed by the Scarecrow. She's thankfully saved by Batman and Robin, but the fighting stops when Hush arrives and catches Robin. He lets his bandages blow away in the wind, and it's... What? But he was... Huh?
Whoa. Lois, this is not the Red Hood.
So to clear the air, in these few pages, this is Jason Todd. After he got his memories back, he worked with Hush to pull this off. He admits as much in Under the Red Hood, but somewhere during the fight, Jason leaves and tags in Clayface to keep fighting while pretending to be Jason pretending to be Hush.
It's Lady Gaga!
It's very confusing, I know, and maybe it was supposed to be a teaser for the Red Hood, but I don't know, there could have been an easier way to do that. Clayface melts away in the rain. Version replaces this scene with a simpler fight between Scarecrow, Nightwing, and Catwoman, and ends with her being kidnapped by Hush.
Have a face full of fear!
Jim then tells Batman about a break-in at Tommy's old office. He gets there and starts examining evidence, discovering someone using the alias Arthur Wynn. Okay, we're in the third act now, and I'm gonna finish up the comic first. Following the graveyard fight, Batman goes to Oracle to help him find a new lead, which brings him to an old mechanic of his named Harold, who admits to betraying Batman and working with Hush before getting shot by the man himself. The two finally start fighting, with Hush revealing both his identity and motivations for what he's done. It turns out it was Tommy Elliott all along. On that night when he and Bruce were kids, he had wanted his parents to die so that he could have all of their money, and his mother surviving ruined that. He envied Bruce inheriting the Wayne fortune so young, and this game, all of these villains and heroes being manipulated, was his elaborate way of getting revenge. And it's honestly pretty cool. He gets the upper hand on Batman, but before he can finish him off, Jim and Two-Face arrive and shoot him down into the water, where his body goes missing. Afterward, in the Batcave, Superman finds a tracking device in Bruce's skull that Tommy must have put there during the surgery in the beginning of the book. He asks Clark to remove it, so he straight up lasers his brain, which is pretty crazy. Then, Batman pays a visit to the true mastermind behind the entire plot, the Riddler. So, as the story goes, Riddler had brain cancer, so he pulled some strings and used a Lazarus pit to cure himself, and while he was in there, he somehow figured out Bruce Wayne is Batman. This led him to connect with Thomas Elliot, who was looking for revenge as discussed earlier. Together, the two planned and gathered all the pieces they needed to target Batman, poisoning Killer Croc to cause him to mutate, fixing Two-Face's scars with surgery, convincing Joker and Harley, and paying off the others. For example, when Bruce knew to have Tommy do the surgery, it was because Harold had images of Tommy's face flash on the computers periodically that kept him in Bruce's mind. When he found Tommy dead outside the opera, it was actually Clayface who had been shot by Harvey, who actually ended up being a fatal flaw in their plan. When the surgery fixed his scars, it cured the personality disorder, which is why he asked Jim for help. Riddler taunts Batman with a secret identity, but he comes back by reminding him that since he used the Lazarus Pit, the League of Assassins would come after him if he revealed anything. Checkmate. This is a really cool twist. Riddler and Tommy working together to take down their mutual enemy is super cool, even if some parts of it are a bit convoluted. Now to finish the movie off, Bats and Jim take the evidence they found at the hospital and pay a visit in Arkham Asylum to the Riddler, who reveals his hand. Like the book, he had cancer, but this time around, he asked Tommy to cure him, which he couldn't. So he instead used the Lazarus Pit and learned Batman's identity. Now, fed up with being a loser compared to the other villains, he became Hush and manipulated everybody to become a new, better villain, even killing Tommy and blaming it on Joker.
My true identity had to be kept hush-hush.
It's at this point that Batman slits his throat. Whoa! What happened to the no-kill rule? Just kidding, because this isn't Riddler, but Clayface. He attacks Bats and Jim while Joker rants like he's being cheated on, and they eventually stop him with a fire hose.
Free! Batsy, are you gonna let him talk to me that way?
Batman then heads to a factory with a name that's an anagram for the name Bruce found at the hospital. He walks through a dark corridor when he finds the body of Tommy, which would be a lot more impactful if we actually saw more of him. He eventually finds the Hushler with Catwoman tied up. There's a cool fight scene between the characters before the factory catches fire, of course.
It won't be pretty.
I'm not scared of them anymore!
And though Batman tries to save him, Riddler falls to his death, and he and Catwoman leave as the building burns to the ground. Now, in both comic and movie, the story ends with Catwoman and Batman breaking up, so to speak. She tells him off for being so stubborn in his mindset, and that someday, maybe he'll understand and reconnect with her, and Batman is left alone in the night. Now, I'm sure you could tell that these last chunks of the story are very different in both story and, in some places, quality. I understand the movie cutting out certain things like the League of Assassins and the Graveyard Jason Todd thing, but then cutting out Tommy almost entirely to make the Riddler Hush feels like a really weird decision. All the flashbacks are removed and he has very little screen time, but then he still pops up in the hospital and the opera, but his death doesn't hit as hard because his friendship with Bruce was really only discussed in passing.
You fell into that nightmare, Master, and I rescued you, remember?
And even with the extra narrative space, the Riddler reveal still feels half-baked. The comics art is great. Jim Lee is firing on all cylinders. These panels look like they were made today. As for the film, the animation is pretty solid and sticks with the New 52 designs of the world from the other movies, which is cool. And for the casting, Batman is played by Jason O'Mara, returning from his other appearances, and his effort remains consistent. He may not reach Conroy levels, but O'Mara still fits the Dark Knight very well, especially in this movie.
Remember what I said about the gas main? I lied.
Other DCAMU regulars like Stuart Allen's Robin, Vanessa Williams as Amanda Waller, and Jerry O'Connell's Superman are all here too, and they do solid jobs. Jennifer Morrison was a fun Catwoman, Rebecca Romaine plays Lois Lane, that rhymed, and Jeffrey Arend is an alright Riddler/Hush. Unfortunately, Jason Spicek's Joker leaves a bit to be desired, but he's not around for very long, so it's fine.
And scene.
Of all people, Peyton List of Jesse and Cobra Kai plays Batgirl, and another Peyton List also plays Poison Ivy. However, nothing prepared me for Rainn Wilson as Lex Luthor. He goes for a more nerdy thing here, which I like at least. It's welcome alongside Dietrich Baders as a different take on the character, even if he doesn't have much screen time.
Would you like a printout? Maybe some hot cocoa before you leave?
So, between the two mediums, the Batman Hush comic wins over the movie. Granted, the book may jump around and get confusing at times.
What is this?
And the movie may be easier to follow, but in doing so, it loses some of the depth that makes the story great, feeling like a sanded-down version instead. The romance plot is executed pretty well, but the trade-off was the literal character assassination of Thomas Elliot. How very Arkham Knight of you. Anyways, that's a 7-to-1 win ratio of books to movies on this series, 10-to-4 if you include ties. And speaking of, all of Season 1 has been reformatted with episode numbers and matching timestamps in case you want to watch them in canonical lore order. But now, we've reached the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found everything to be entertaining and informative. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more from me and this series in the future, and I'll see you nerds later.
Tell me why it ain't nothing but a holiday. Tell me why it ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way.